Oslofjord. Oslo moet een van de minst stresserende hoofdsteden ter wereld zijn. Zelden zoveel rustige, vriendelijke mensen ontmoet. Ze leven met z'n 5 miljoen in een land 10 maal zo groot als België en hebben de hoogste levensstandaard en beste sociale voorzieningen. Dit is waarschijnlijk het enigste land waar je zomaar het parlement binnenstapt, zonder dat er politie of leger voor de deur staat. Ik heb er een afspraak met deze man, Kjell Bondevik. We wrote a few presents. This is the book on the international series we did so far, book with talks, where you're a part of now. And chocolates.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Sweets, I'm very glad. Sweets.
Okay, you're very glad to be here in Oslo and to have this interview with you.
Yes, I look forward to it.
Shall we go?
Yes, we do. Yeah. I grew up in a very secure environment. We were 4 boys and one girl. Parents who lived together all their life and took care of us. And also a very secure environment in the local society, in the school. For instance, I remember very well Saturday evenings, my parents gathered, the whole family, and we were together. My mother made special good meal to us, and we had some different games played during the evening and night. So these are very good memories for me.
What persons influenced you when you were young?
Of course, the teachers. For many pupils, the teachers are important, and I had very good teachers, especially in the compulsory school, I remember. They influenced me. But first and foremost, my mother and my father. They were very convinced Christians. They gave me very clear norms and values, but also always gave me a free choice. They didn't force me to do special things or to live in a special way. They said, this we mean is the right way of living, this is the right choice, but it's your own choice. Mm-hmm. And that is an ideal also for me and my wife when we try to take care of our children.
Are there some ideas or books that influenced you, that grabbed you as a youngster?
Yes, I was a pupil in the upper secondary school in the middle of the 60s, and in the end of the 60s I came to Oslo as a student, and that in that time it was a special consciousness about the third world's problems, environment and resources problems. So an ideal for me was very early to work in favor of poor people, of refugees, to fight violence of human rights and these things. So global issues and to be involved in that for international solidarity, love our neighbors also in other countries, that was ideals for me very early. I was engaged in politics very early. When I came to Oslo, started to study theology, I more and more also was engaged in the Christian Democratic Party's youth organization. I ended up as a leader of the youth organization. So politics took more and more over in my life. I finalized and graduated as a theologian, but I was full-time politician very early, from 72, so it's almost now for 30 years. So unfortunately, I have never been a full-time priest in the Lutheran Church of Norway, the state church. I have taken some services from time to time. I have also during summer vacations served as a priest, but not as a full-time. But I feel that through my positions in public life and as a politician and in leading positions in Norwegian politics, I have had also the possibility to spread the gospel and Christianity.
Can you give some concrete examples?
Yes, for instance, I have given many interviews during my period as Prime Minister, especially, where also reporters asked me about my belief, my Christian faith, and that gave me an opportunity to tell about it. And that was also not only on national level, but also internationally. And of course, I had many important speeches, and this also gave me opportunities to emphasize what is important in our lives, and which ethical norms and values should be given priority. And I feel that through these channels I have had good opportunities also to tell about my Lord. I have also had many good memories from my international activities in that regard. I have met other leading international politicians who have the same beliefs, the same Christian faith, conviction as I. And this has given me opportunities to exchange views with such colleagues.
But in how far is this very deep or grounded? What I mean, the following: people have got the impression a lot of times that politicians they only care about their image and about money, and so Christianity is about something totally different. In what way can you combine being a true Christian with being a statesman in a modern world where capitalism is so strong?
That's a very crucial, important questions. And as Christian human beings, we have, what shall we see, two dimensions in our life. We have the vertical dimension, our relation to God, but also the horizontal dimension, our relations to other human beings. And it's my opinion that God has not only asked us to follow him to heaven, but he has also asked and challenged us to work here in this world as long as we are living here, to make society as good as possible for all our neighbors. And we have a special possibility and opportunity to do so through politics, because politics is about how we can make this society to a better place to live for all human beings, both nationally and internationally. So for me, it's no contradiction to be a Christian and to be a politician. But of course, we have limits in politics, what we can achieve, and it's not always the results are in accordance with our ideals. But I see it in that way, rather pragmatic, that if you have a goal you are striving for to achieve, if you are not achieving it 100%, if you can move the society, let us say 50% against the goal, it is better than 0% or 10%. Yeah. So, of course, we have, as you said, to make compromises.
Yes.
But if you move the society in the right direction, I think that is better than only to stand up for your ideals and lose everything.
What is power to you?
Power is for me necessary to influence the society and to try to improve the environment for human beings. I'm not only thinking of nature, the physical environment, but also the cultural environment. So power is necessary. Very often this word is used in a bad manner, but power is necessary. And if myself and my party has not the power, others will have it. And if I have some ideals for a society, I have to strive for power.
It's a kind of struggle.
It's a struggle, everyday struggle.
You were talking, you said something about your relation to God. Now, I wanted to know some more about that, if it's possible for you to talk about it. How do you see it or feel it, or what is it to you?
Today I think I can say that my belief in God and Jesus Christ is the most important thing for me in life. Because without God, I will feel it more or less meaningless. It has not been in such a way all the time. I had some years when I grew up where I tried to leave the Christian environment, the church, the belief, because I thought it was better to have the complete freedom and do what I want and believe what I want. But after some time I found that this was not the freedom. Freedom is to be linked to God. Today I feel it in that way, that this gives me the real meaning of life. First of all, God is for me, and Jesus Christ is for me the Savior. Forgive me all the sins, which give me hope for forever. Secondly, I can come to God every day and ask for forgiveness, and He gives it. And He gives me strength, and He gives me help through problems, not around the problems, but through the problems. I have felt many times.
Mm-hmm. Is it a kind of relationship then you're talking about?
Yes, it is. So Christianity for me, Christian belief, is not a part of the life. Some hours you deal with other things, and so you, for instance, in the evenings or nights can deal with God. That's not for me the way of thinking. God, the relation to God is following me the whole day, all the time. And influence also, and should influence how I act in my job, in my relations to other human beings.
Do you pray?
Oh yes, I do. Not as often as I should, but I try to do it in the morning, in the night. But it's also possible, despite that you are not sitting for yourself, also to pray through the day. Not to sit alone in a room and pray in silence, but you can also have a praying attitude. When you're going in the street, when you're sitting in your office, maybe you are in a situation where you especially need help. Then I often try to pray.
Is it a kind of praying with words or in silence?
Sometimes without words, just thinking of God and request Him or ask Him to help me, only some few seconds.
How do you know that He gives an answer?
I'm convinced, because I have felt so many times that He has helped me through. Not always in the way I expected, but afterwards I have felt that He was there.
You go to a Bible group every
second week.
Also during your period as a minister?
Oh yes, I tried. And it was, I had to, in my schedule, in my plans, to set aside time for this. So I told my secretaries in my office that this evening I'm occupied, because we have a Bible group. So please don't occupy me with other meetings that evening.
Isn't it kind of strange that a statesman can be that open on religious matters and, for instance, reserve time for that? Isn't it regarded as, unprofessional? I mean, doesn't the outside world think this is not done?
Maybe some, but I feel that today it's more openness in our societies about the religious and Christian questions than it was some years ago. That's my feeling here from Norway. In public life, it's easier today to talk about God, yes, even to talk about Jesus Christ, than it was some years ago. We see it in interviews also with other leaders, not only politicians. Many people, of course, doubt. I'm not sure if they can say that they are Christians or not, but they are more and more open to talk about it. That's my feeling. So I felt during my period as Prime Minister that when I talked about these things, as we do now, I did not meet bad reactions, but mostly I met positive reactions.
Mm-hmm. Didn't you ever doubt the existence of God?
Not seriously. As I mentioned, during my years of growing up, some years I tried to leave the Christian church and thinking, and I will not, but in the bottom of my heart I didn't really doubt that God exists. It was more the environment and regulations for Christians and so on I wanted to live. So I'm happy in that way that I never seriously have doubted God's existence. But of course, for instance, when you go out in the poor countries and developing countries, see the poverty, see how many people suffer. Sometimes you are asking yourself, how can God allow these things happening? That is a serious question. I don't think we will have a good answer on that question as long as we live here on world, on Earth. But God.
How do you cope with these problems then? Poverty in a third world countries, or poverty on the whole, or suffering? How do you cope?
This is, in my opinion, the most important challenge to us today, in addition to fighting for human rights. It has been a priority for me all the time in politics to increase Norway's engagement for the developing countries. That has, of course, to do with developing aid and humanitarian assistance, but it has also to do with international trade and economy. And for instance, the debt burden for the developing countries is today a very serious problem for many of these countries. In Norway, through my period in government, we made a debt relief plan where we'll now lift the debt burden for the poor countries who have debt to Norway. And this has fortunately been an example also to other countries, and I know that other countries, also more powerful and bigger countries than Norway, are doing the same thing.
Well, Norway is a very rich country. It's full of oil and gas, but can an affluent society, a rich society, also be a Christian society? Because you see a lot of times that when people get rich, they...
I think it can be, but it depends on how we use our richdom. If we not use it only on ourselves, but use it to all people in our own country, but also to other peoples in poor countries, then richdom can be a blessing for many people. But if we only spend it on ourselves, on materialistic values and increasing them, then it's not in accordance with Christian ideals. Today I not believe so much in that we can regulate the ways of how people live through legislation and regulations. And the reason for that are many, but one is what we call the globalization, the modern information technology, which, for instance, makes it more difficult than before to have censorship on films and videos and TV channels and all these things, because all these things are coming over the borders. And so therefore I'm more and more convinced that we have to increase the consciousness on values and ethical norms within every individual, to build up a moral standard in that way. Not so much from above through laws and regulations, but from the bottom, from the ground in every individual. And I'm differing also between three levels. We can talk about every human being, the individuals. That's the ground level. So we have what we call the civil society, which is between the individuals and the state. And so the third level is, of course, the state, the public life. And what was the idea behind the Value Commission was to increase the consciousness about which values and which ethical norms should we build upon as individuals in the civil society and in the public life, in politics, for the state. And this Value Commission has stimulated to such debate. I know in many schools, in school classes, on working places, in companies, in firms, in local communities, in non-governmental organizations. They now discuss what are the values which we shall build our activities on, and which ethical norms do we need to realize these values. And that's exactly what I wanted. And this Value Commission will finalize its work next summer, and will then give an final report on their work. And I'm really looking forward also to that report. But more than the report, I think the processes they have stimulated are important.
Yes, I just wondered, how can you get people as individuals to build up values in themselves? How can you get people to that ideal?
I think the main issue, it's a very simple question, but the main thing is to ask ourselves, what is valuable for me? What is important to me? And you can be very concrete. You can take your pen and write it down on paper. What is important to me? And if I should give an answer for me, myself, it will be my Christian faith, maybe number one. My family, number two. Friends, for instance, number three. A clean environment, nature, number four, and so on. These are the values. And then is the second question. Which ethical norms do I need to realize these values in praxis? So we can start there, very basic but important questions. And what is another important thing is that if a society shall be a healthy society and be sound, then we also need some common values and some common ethical norms, how we live together, how we act together, how the relations between us should be. Because if we disagree on every value and every ethical norm, then it will be very difficult to have a fruitful relations.
The most important problems in present-day society?
Yeah, first of all, I want to repeat that we have many good qualities in today's society. And the social security is better than ever for most of the people. The living standard also is better. But despite of that, we have some problems we have to deal with. First of all, I think I will say lack of respect for human life and dignity. I'm thinking of the abortion problem. I'm thinking of the increasing of violence we see in many modern societies, which is also a consequence of lack of respect of life. Another problem is, of course, the dissolving of family, because, in my opinion, the family unit, the community, is so important to us, because there we can find the closest relations between people. There we can find strength to go out in the society, which is very often hard. So that is, in my opinion, a problem. So family policy has, for me and for my party, therefore been very important. Thirdly, I will say we also see tendencies to lack of solidarity, both on national and international level. People very often are thinking most on themselves, not so much on our neighbors who really need support. Pollution, environmental problems are, of course, also very important. But I think we have focused more on this over the last years, and that has been positive. I think it's possible to solve the environmental problems, but we have still to deal much with them.
How do you see religion in the next millennium?
I think that religions can play an increasing role. The reason why that is I think that many people will not feel satisfied with a more and more materialistic way of life. Because today, the majority of the people in the rich countries have more than enough things and more than enough money. But despite of that, we see that people are not satisfied. And I think that more and more people will ask for what is the meaning of the life. And this gives an openness for not only cultural questions, but also religious issues. And this is an opportunity for the Christian Church to spread the gospel, glad gospel, good gospel of Jesus Christ. Secondly, I think that religion and Christian churches also can play a role in the interrelations between human beings.
Sometimes peace only exists in the mind of some enlightened spirits, while people on the streets, they scream and they are violent.
Yeah, that's a very serious tendency we see also in the modern societies today, as also in Norway. Crime in streets is increasing. And I think there are complicated reasons behind this, but I think one important thing is how can we expect peace in the streets when we send so much violence into the private homes through mass media, through TV, through video, through internet, and where also the small children are influenced by violence always, every day. How does this influence their way of thinking when they come out in the streets? I'm convinced that this is one of the main reasons why we see an increasing violence.
So mass media have got a very important role then.
Yes, and I think the responsibility for mass media to think about these things is very, very heavy, very important.
But they are controlled by heavy commercialism nowadays.
They are, and as I mentioned earlier, it's more difficult today because of the globalization also of mass media and information technology to regulate this through laws and restrictions. So I think it's so important that people working in mass media themselves have to think about this. What are we sending to people, and especially to children?
Looking back on your career as a politician, has there been a moment that you cherish, that you say, okay, that something that you achieved, that you say, this is really good, that I'm here and doing this job?
Oh yes, it has happened from time to time. For instance, now through my period as Prime Minister, we succeeded in having approved in the Parliament a family policy reform. Which gives the parents of smaller children a better free choice on how they should take care of the children. So parents who have the children in kindergartens, they have economic support for that, and that is right, that we want to continue with. But parents who had not the children in kindergarten but took more time to take care of themselves had not the same economic support. And we felt this was wrong. We wanted more equality and just economic support. So we changed this, so they now have the same economic support. Many parents were satisfied and lucky with that, and I was lucky that we succeeded in having approved this reform in the parliament. It was rather controversial, and is still to some extent controversial. Another example could be that also through my period as Prime Minister, we succeeded to set up an action plan for human rights, for our work for human rights, both nationally in Norway and internationally, with 300 concrete different means on how we should work for more respect for human rights. That was another important thing for me.
Why is it that important? Does it refer to your old ideals?
Yes, that refers to my old ideals, where human rights, work for poor people, and protecting the family were some of the ideals also when I grew up. So now I feel that after many years I could really realize some of these ideals through my concrete work in politics.
Can you see a ground layer? You say the third world, the family, etc. Does it all go back to one structure you want to do, or one thing you want to do?
I think all these things are going back to the basic value of human dignity, respect for every human being. That is the starting point for my politics.
Suppose I gave you 3 words: priest, husband and father, or statesman, and you would have to choose. What are you as a human being?
The most important thing for me is my life in my family. And if my children can say that you have been a good father, a good family member, that is the most important thing.
Have you got the impression that there is a line in your life that you're guided?
Yes. I believe that I am guided, and deepest guided by God. And I can tell you that in '97, my plan was to leave politics. And I was convinced that I should not be renominated to the parliament in '97, because I had then been full-time politician for 25 years, and I think that was enough. So my plan was to leave. But so gradually my mind was changed of different reasons, and it's also difficult to have a clear rational explanation for how it ended up. So it ended up by saying yes to 4 more years in parliament. And so we did a very good election in '97. I ended up as Prime Minister, which I never expected, because I felt that I have achieved more than enough. I have been party leader, parliamentary leader, twice minister in governments, so I had not personally needs for more. But I ended up as Prime Minister, and I felt that through these 2.5 years, I could do something for my people, for my country, which I could not earlier. This gave me a better platform. So I think I was also guided into this position.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bondevik, for this openness in sharing your ideas with us. Thank you.